Hello, this is Lady B, and I'm afraid these last few weeks I haven't been up to making any videos, but I'm doing better, and I thought it would be fun to do a follow-up on my video on container gardening. Just show you a little bit about what I have grown, how to take care of it, and what I use it for, along with a couple of tips. Now, the first tip I want to give you actually has to do with this, the shade cloth. I had mentioned in my other video about how living where it's hot like I do, it's important to have shade cloth so you can grow things. And it works really well. This is I'm not sure what weight it is. This is an older one. But you have to have something, a frame to put your shade cloth on. And if you go online and you look at the professional shade cloth kits that there are there, or even just the instructions on how to make your own, you will find that you can spend a lot of money on a frame to put your shade cloth up on. Now, this frame I have here, I actually spent $3 on. Let me see if I can show it to you a little better. See. You can see that frame there. Okay, so what this is this is a frame for a camping food tent. Now, they use it for camping. It's a cloth cover that goes over a frame, and it's just an open space underneath for people to eat under or to do their cooking, or just a shade tent for when you're up in the mountains in case it rains, or just to keep it out of the sun. But inevitably, the cloth cover that comes with these fail. And instead of writing the company and ordering a new cover, most people will just throw the cover away and buy a whole new canopy set. And they'll take the old frame, which are, in this case, it's metal. It's a metal frame. And they'll pack it up and they'll send it to a secondhand store, which is where I found this. And I paid $3 at a secondhand store for this food tent frame, which holds my shade cloth perfectly. And you cannot beat $3. I could not even imagine spending that little on a homemade frame. In the past, I have used bamboo frames and wood frames and trellising, and I've spent between $30 and $50 a year. $3 this time, and it works so much better than everything else I have ever used. So that's tip number one. Okay, so first moving on to my plants that actually do not need to be under the shade cloth. I have here on one side my peppers, and they are these beautiful plants. Give it a few more weeks and they will start fruiting. Peppers love the heat. I've found they grow beautifully here in this desert as long as I make sure and give them enough water. The only tip you need to know about growing peppers, other than make sure and get them enough water, is that you should not grow different types of peppers next to each other. They tend to cross-pollinate, and my mother made the mistake one year of trying to grow hot peppers next to bell peppers, and she had the mildest hot peppers she had ever grown in her life. The cayennes tasted like bell peppers. They will cross-pollinate. This particular breed is a Korean breed. It's a nice hot pepper. I love them. Now, this is garlic chives. They also do very, very, very well in the heat. This particular breed of chives is actually a Chinese variety, which is why it's so large. And every few years you have to break them up and separate them because they will continue to expand. But they love the heat. And you can not only put them in salads, but they are amazing in stir fries. I'm actually going to harvest a bunch of these and use them for lunch today. I have here 2 boxes of it. You'll notice you have, this is the taller one and this is the shorter one. The reason I have done that is because they really only reach this height and this size in the second year, this particular type, the Chinese chives. And so you want to wait a year before you pick them. So this is my growth for next year, and this is what I will be picking and eating this year, and I'll be alternating my boxes for that. So if you want to grow the Chinese variety, you need to alternate if you're going to have it every year. The standard chives, garlic chives that you find in most gardens though, you don't need to do that. You can pick them. All you have to do is make sure and separate them, as I said, occasionally break them up. You'll notice that there's some small bits here under here. These things will propagate like crazy. They shoot up and put seeds everywhere, and I have been picking seeds of this out of all of the rest of my garden. They grow like crazy. And so I actually almost have to treat them like a weed when they're not in my box. I have to keep it contained. All right, so the next thing I wanted to show you is my parsley. This is another one that I have 2 bins of. These are earth boxes. All of these so far have been earth boxes, and I have 2 of them because in the case of parsley, it also has a 2-year cycle. This is my parsley I will be using this year right here. You can see how it's beautiful and grown. I love using this in my chilies and my spicy foods. This is my parsley from last year. In the second year, it's when it will shoot up and send up these stalks with the seeds on it, and it will reseed itself, or you can collect the seeds to grow some more. So that's why I have 2 boxes. In the case of the parsley, it's so I can get my seeds, so I don't have to buy seeds, and I can just keep growing perpetually. So this year for use, for culinary use, and this is for my seeds right here. This is my Shiso or Perilla, and this is the first year I've grown it. This is again in an earth box. It does not traditionally do well in the heat, which is why I have it under the shade cloth, and it has grown beautifully even if some insects have gotten at it. Now I have grown this for the first time this year because it is used in some of my favorite Korean dishes, so I will be using this as a culinary green. Maintaining it, I'm actually a little behind on that. What you do is anytime it gets above 6 to 8 inches tall, you come in and you clip it, and you make sure you leave at least 4 leaves for it to grow from. I'm going to clip it about right here, and this will encourage it to grow out and be bushier. I'm also going to take off these larger leaves right here. And with these types of plants, mint and so forth, this will encourage it to bush out and become fuller. And I'll use these leaves in my cooking. I just love Korean food, so I am very, very excited about this. Now, I don't have to just use it, clip it back when it's like this. I can actually come in and pick individual leaves when I want them for the cooking. Now this is my basil. I have 3 plants here. This is the little tag for it. Usually I grow it from seed. This year I forgot to order the seeds, so I just bought the plants. I do have to replant this every year, but it is worth it. Now, most people will tell you you cannot grow it in this hot of a climate. They are wrong. You absolutely can. You just have to grow it under a shade cloth. You have to get it started before it gets too hot, so you have got a nice root system, and you have to keep it cut back. You cannot let it get so high that it bolts, especially when it gets hot. And just like with the Shiso, these are all related, you do the same thing. Once it gets above 6 to 8 inches tall, between 6 and 8 inches tall, I've actually let these grow a little too big, you cut it back and you make sure there's at least 4 leaves on the bottom for it to continue to grow, and it will bush out. So this is going to make an amazing pesto for my family. And as long as you keep it cut back, and if it tries to bolt, you just cut off the flowers, it will just continue to flourish as long as you've kept it in the shade, under the shade cloth, and you have kept it watered. And there's just nothing better than fresh pesto. And these grow beautifully in pots. These are not earth boxes. These are the first pots I'm showing you that are not earth boxes. They don't need to be. You just have to make sure you have a good potting soil and you keep them watered. Growing next to my basil, you can see my Horehound. Now, like the basil, I have actually let this grow too tall. Now, normally you would not grow Horehound next to basil or parsley, but it's not because they can't grow near each other. In fact, your Horehound is really good for keeping the bad insects and bugs away, and you want to have it in with your garden. The problem is that Horehound, it is a drier plant. It does not require as much water. So you cannot grow it in the ground near these plants, or you will end up overwatering it and killing it. But since this is also in a pot, I don't have that problem. I can grow them right next to each other and it's fine. And these leaves make, I think, one of the best candies there is. I grew up with it. I just love it. It's really easy to make. You just pull off the leaves and you can dry them or use them fresh, and you make a tea out of them. And for every 1 cup of the tea you've made with it, you would then add 2 cups by volume of sugar, and you basically cook it to the hardball or the crackle stage, depending on how you like it. In my family, we would use this as a cough remedy when someone had a cold. We would actually make it not with sugar but with honey, and we would only cook it to the soft or hardball stage depending on our mood, and it was almost like a taffy, and we would just suck on it when we had a sore throat from our cold, and it was just wonderful. And because these are growing up like this, they have not started flowering yet, which is good, because that means that just like the others, I can cut them down and they will fill out and become even bushier. Again, 6 to 8 inches tall. You just make sure you have at least 4 branches below. I'm leaving a lot more than that. And I'll be able to hang these up and dry them and just get this wonderful tea. Now, it doesn't taste good fresh. You do not eat this leaf right out of the garden. You either have to dry it or you make it into a tea. But once you've done that, it is just delicious. This is my lemon verbena. I have mentioned it before, as I grow this instead of lemongrass because this will survive over the winter where lemongrass will not, even in my hot climate. But it does require some maintenance. Anytime it grows above 9 inches or so, as it has here, you want to cut it back to between 6 and 9 inches. And you can take these and dry them and use them later. And it just, oh, it smells so amazing. And this is, you have to be careful with lemon verbena to not overwater it. You can see here by the white chalkiness on here, it's actually been slightly overwatered. It likes a drier soil, which is what makes it so good for this area. But I just clip that back, and anywhere I have clipped that, it's now going to branch out and create new branches and spread out and become bushier. We just keep this low. It helps it, keeping it low like this, again, it helps keep it from expending its strength on these tall branches it doesn't need, and it will take that strength and it will just make it bushier instead. And this will just get bushier and bushier all summer. You can see here in the middle here where I have growth from previous years. And it will grow like this until it gets too cold, and then it will look like it's dead, but it's not. You leave it be. Come spring, it will just send out new shoots. As you can see here, the old ones from the previous years, it'll send out these new shoots, and you'll just have a new plant that you just trim back and grow again the next year and keep growing it every year. All right, this is my Swiss chard. Because I live in a hotter area, you cannot grow spinach well here. The spinach just does not do well in the heat, but chard does amazing. Now, I have some seeds coming of something called perpetual spinach. It's actually a type of chard. Tastes very similar to spinach, and given a month or so, I will be starting them inside, and then as soon as it starts cooling off, I will be planting them, and I can grow chard here, any kind of chard, year round. So I like to have at least one box. This is an earth box again, and in the earth boxes, as long as I keep them watered, I find they grow year round. Now, if you live somewhere where it actually snows in the winter, you will need to cover it up in the winter to keep it growing. But chard is amazingly, amazingly resilient. And these are a great example of that. It's difficult to see, but if you look in the very back here, you can see some of my smaller chard plants here. These got eaten, when I very first planted these, got eaten by bugs. I have no idea what it was that ate them, but it ate these guys down to the nubs, and they're still alive. That tells you just how hardy they are. Now, for maintaining them, for their health, if they do get eaten on by insects or birds or anything else, and you get bits that look like this, just cut them off. It'll help keep it healthy. But for harvesting, all you do is you just harvest these outer leaves. Now, you can eat these stems. I'm not a big fan of them. I prefer to just eat the leafy part. But the stems are edible. And when I cut them off, I like to cut it all the way at the base, because anything you leave on the plant is going to be expending energy to maintain and keep it alive. So as I cut my leaves off, I like to cut it as low as possible, even though I'm not necessarily going to be eating this part of the stalk, because that way I'm just giving my plant more energy to spend on the leaves I do want to eat. So this last box is something I don't normally do, but I did this time because I need to buy 3 more pots, and I didn't want to deal with it this year. And I had this extra pot. This is actually where I will eventually be growing my new chard that I have ordered. But for right now, I wanted to show what you can do with one of these earth boxes. You don't have to just grow one type of thing in it. Some more garlic chives. I have here 3 different herbs. I have here some golden oregano, which I love my oregano. Here I have my French tarragon, and then this is my marjoram, which again I have allowed to actually overgrow just a little bit, as you can see by the fact that it has flowered. Now these flowers will attract bees, which is really nice. But in the case of marjoram, it is another one of these plants where you might want to grow it in a pot rather than in the ground, because it will just spread everywhere. So you not only want to keep it cut back to prevent that, you also want to cut it back in order to encourage it to have, say, a leafy, bushy growth as opposed to a thin, sprawling growth. So I've allowed it to get just a little too much, so I need to cut that back, and that will then, like I said, it will encourage it to be more bushy, and then about every 3 or 4 years you have to replace it. But if you keep it cut back, you can have it for that 3 or 4 years. So that's everything for today, and this is my harvest. Some of this I'm going to dry, and some of this I'm going to eat today, because there is nothing quite like fresh vegetables for delicious food. Now, if you're one of my subscribers who've stuck around during my hiatus and you're back, I love you. Thank you for staying. If you're new and you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and I will see all of you next week. Until then, just remember, no matter what your climate or how much or how little space you have, You can do it. You can grow in a container or otherwise a garden. It can be done, and you can get some delicious herbs and food out of it. Until next week. Or now, earlier I mentioned how I get these chives growing everywhere. Here's another chive I have to pull out of that garden bed, and for that matter, you can tell that I have already let my parsley go to seed once, because here's a volunteer parsley plant, which I don't want there either. Oh, and more chives. But look at all this. Garlic chives. They're just everywhere in this box. What is this?
It looks like the peppers.
Oh my gosh, it looks like I have a volunteer pepper plant. I wonder what kind it is. Maybe I should find a pot for it and see what grows.